Hello there, friends and supporters on YouTube. Hello to you new subscribers and people just tuning into the channel. This is Jake on the Light, bringing you a real news briefing, and I call it a real news briefing because often I'm talking about the stock market. I like to talk about cannabis news, hemp, industrial hemp, and the related stocks. I like to talk about the economy, the stock market, statistics, and cool technologies and things that I'm looking at, either just out of pure interest or out of the potential investment thesis. Now, today, I actually want to talk to you about some very, very serious news, and that's why I call this a real news briefing. Now, one of my earlier videos on this was pretty big, and I haven't talked about it for a while, but 2 years ago, there was actually a case against Monsanto by Dwayne Johnson, a man with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. He and his legal team were able to prove that Roundup, a cancer-causing herbicide, was actually the root cause of his non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. Not only that, but that due to false advertising by Monsanto, that he was never warned about its possible damaging effects. Now, a unanimous jury awarded Johnson $289 million in August 2018, including $250 million in punitive damages, finding that not only did Monsanto's glyphosate-based herbicides cause Johnson to develop non-Hodgkin lymphoma, but that the company knew of the cancer-causing risks and failed to warn him. The trial judge then lowered the total verdict to $78 million, but Monsanto appealed the reduced amount. They continued to try to appeal and say that they should pay out nothing, not even $78 million. Now, Johnson has cross-appealed to reinstate the $289 million verdict that was originally awarded. Now, this is pretty crazy that Monsanto would keep fighting, but they're a massive company now owned by Bayer, a massive agrochemical company that was responsible for Auschwitz and the Holocaust. And this company here, Monsanto, in internal documents showed that they expected the Internal Agency for Research on Cancer to classify glyphosate in 2015 as a possible or probable human carcinogen. Now, they actually then worked out a plan in advance to discredit the cancer scientists and to continue to advance their chemicals. This is pretty terrifying stuff to see this company mobilize this way against science, against people in general. And now I want to talk about this because in the recent weeks, the EPA under the current U.S. administration has reapproved a key Roundup chemical, glyphosate, that was shown to be the cause of non-Hodgkin's lymphoma in the Johnson case and in thousands of court cases since then. And the EPA is being sued over this because it's already been shown that this chemical is not only unhealthy for people and the farmers that use it, but that actually it's really terrible for the environment. It's contributing to the pollution of the water table, to soil, killing the bees. But Bayer, of course, called the EPA's review of glyphosate extremely robust in a statement last Friday. Now, glyphosate is the most commonly used herbicide among farmers, and it is the key ingredient in Bayer Monsanto's Roundup weed killer. The company faces several lawsuits regarding Monsanto's Roundup, and you know, it's a wonder why Bayer would buy them out in the middle of all of this. But I'm going to continue to tell you the details and why I think that the motivations are actually quite sinister. And, you know, people have known for years that glyphosate could kill you, especially if you drank it or came in close contact with it. This is a article in 1999 that even talks about how a 6-year-old boy, died after drinking herbicide from a bottle used for soda water, and the boy just didn't know what it was. He died. This stuff can kill you, but as you can see, Monsanto has lobbied for years with sophisticated media and lies to try to say otherwise. Now, just watch this video, and I'll continue to show you how evil this really is.
Sunday, we told you about a WHO report that listed several chemicals as potentially cancer-causing, including glyphosate. found in the popular weed killer Roundup. Now, in an interview for an upcoming French documentary, a Canadian scientist has been caught in an Aaron Brockovich-like moment when he's asked to defend that chemical against links to cancer rates in Argentina. Take a look.
I do not believe that glyphosate in Argentina is causing increases in cancer. You can drink a whole quart of it and it won't hurt you.
You want to drink some? We have some here.
I'd be happy to, actually, but not really, but
Not really?
I know it wouldn't hurt me.
If you say so, I have some glyphosate.
No, I'm not stupid.
Okay, so you.
No, but I know
so
that
it's dangerous,
I know,
right?
No, people try to commit suicide with it and fail fairly regularly.
Tell the truth.
It's not dangerous to humans. No, it's not.
So you're ready to drink one glass of glyphosate?
No, I'm not an idiot.
The clip is being shared widely. But despite headlines like these, the man being interviewed, Patrick Moore, is not a lobbyist for Monsanto, the makers of Roundup. He is, however, known for controversy.
I have somehow evolved into an environmentalist that supports nuclear energy and is somewhat skeptical of human-caused climate change.
Moore spent years early on with Greenpeace Canada, but it no longer recognizes him as a supporter and accuses him of turning into a paid mouthpiece for polluting companies. Meanwhile, glyphosate is still approved for use in this country, though Health Canada says it's looking into the WHO report.
Now, as you can see from the video, this man is not directly connected to Monsanto as a lobbyist. However, one has to wonder what the motivations would be to continue to support this deadly and shown to be deadly chemical. Now, this man, of course, has come under attack by all kinds of environmentalists and Greenpeace. This man supports glyphosate, supports Monsanto, but he won't touch the stuff when he's offered an opportunity there in that interview. Now, you can say what you want about that being a loaded question for the interview, whatever you want to say, but truly, it's pretty devilish the way this company is attacking people. And really, I want to talk to you about the complete history of Monsanto, as this article calls it, the world's most evil corporation. In 1901, the company is founded by John Francis Queeny. Now, he was a 30-year pharmaceutical veteran, married to Olga Mendez Monsanto, for which Monsanto Chemical Works is named. And the company's first chemical was actually saccharin, sold to Coca-Cola as an artificial sweetener. Even then, the government knew saccharin was poisonous and sued to stop its manufacture, but lost in court, thus opening the Monsanto Pandora's box to begin poisoning the world through the soft drink. How crazy is that? Their very first product was poison. Now, in the 1920s, they expand to industrial chemicals and drugs, becoming the world's first maker of aspirin. Now, this is also when things began to go horribly wrong for the planet in a hurry with the introduction of the PCBs, a wonder, an industrial wonder, an oil that wouldn't burn, impervious to degradation, and had almost limitless applications. But today, PCBs are considered to be one of the gravest chemical threats to the planet, widely used as lubricants, hydraulic fluids, cutting oils, waterproof coatings, and liquid sealants, are potent carcinogens and have been implicated in the reproductive, developmental, and immune system disorders. The world center of PCB manufacturing was Monsanto's plants in the outskirts of East St. Louis, Illinois, which has the highest rate of fetal death and immature births in the state. Even though PCBs were eventually banned, it's still present in just about all human blood and tissue cells across the globe because it never degrades. It's still affecting us to this day. Documents introduced in court later showed Monsanto was fully aware of the deadly effects, but they hid these results. And in the 30s, it created its first hybrid seed corn and expands into detergent, soaps, industrial cleaning products, synthetic rubbers, and plastics. Oh, yes, very toxic. In the 1940s, they began to research uranium to be used for the Manhattan Project and the first atomic bomb, which would later be dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, killing so many people. And then they continued to go on and on, just with this deadly killing spree, creating pesticides for agriculture containing deadly dioxin, which poisons the food and water supplies. It was later discovered Monsanto failed to disclose that dioxin was used in a wide range of their products, because doing so would force them to acknowledge it had created an environmental hell on Earth. This was back in the 40s. Then in the 50s, closely aligned with the Walt Disney Company, they create several attractions at Disney's Tomorrowland, espousing the glories of chemicals and plastics. Their house of the future is constructed entirely out of toxic plastic that's not biodegradable, as they had asserted. And so it was not biodegradable plastic, as Monsanto had asserted. And after attracting a total of 20 million visitors in 10 years, Disney finally tore the house down. But they discovered that it was almost impossible to tear this thing down, actually, with this reinforced polyester material. Go figure. Now, Monsanto has continued this killing spree. Then in the 60s, along with chemical partner in crime Dow Chemical, they produced this deadly dioxy-laced Agent Orange for use in the U.S.'s Vietnam invasion. Over 3 million people contaminated, 500,000 Vietnamese civilians dead, 500,000 Vietnamese babies born with birth defects, and thousands of U.S. military veterans suffering or dying from this effects to this day. Monsanto was hauled to court again with internal memos that show that they knew the deadly effects of dioxin in Agent Orange. Now they had this evidence. They've continued to hide things from people forever. And then actually, Monsanto partners with IG Farben, makers of Bayer aspirin, and the Third Reich's go-to chemical manufacturer, producing Zyklon B gas during World War II. Together, the companies used their collective expertise to produce aspartame, a deadly neurotoxin, and introduce it to the food supply, again, as a sweetener like saccharin. Monsanto exploits the opportunity to introduce yet another of its deadly poisons. And, they just continue this killing spree. They just continue on and on and on for decades, actually, from there. And in the 80s, this indisputable research into the toxic effects of aspartame was shown. There was a petition to keep it off the market. And, Reagan fires the uncooperative Goyen and then appoints someone else to the FDA who quickly tips the scales in favor of NutraSweet. This is really, as described in the article, sadly ironic, since Reagan, a known jelly bean and candy enthusiast, later suffers from Alzheimer's during his second term, probably partly due to eating aspartame manufactured and made by Monsanto. This just continues on and on and on, and Monsanto poisons people. Here's an article you should check out about how Monsanto Industrial Chemicals admitted to poisoning residents in Anniston, Alabama with PCBs, those hard to get rid of chemicals that are still in human tissues and cells all across the world. They knew for years and years that these chemicals being produced at the plants, were killing people, and they didn't care. And to this day, this neighborhood is actually really dangerous to live in due to this contamination. Monsanto did not care, and now dicamba is on trial as Monsanto decided to pull back on testing of their herbicide, dicamba, prior to rolling it out. Go figure. Another lawsuit. Now, let's go into the dark history of Bayer here. Now, best known for really their aspirin, they were founded in 1863. Bayer became part of IG Farben, a powerful German chemical conglomerate, in 1925. Now, the founding of Bayer and their continued work has been recorded through the Holocaust, and now Bayer, in the Holocaust, strongly supported the Third Reich. And they actually were complicit in these crimes. The company took advantage of the absence of the legal and ethical constraints on medical experimentation to test drugs on unwilling human subjects. These included paying a retainer to these, horrible people. They actually deliberately infected patients at the Dachau, Auschwitz, and Gusen concentration camps. It's pretty sick. Bayer was particularly active in Auschwitz. They oversaw the chemical factory in Auschwitz III. Most of the experiments were actually conducted in the block of the women's camp hospital. There, they did some really horrible things and often deliberately infected people with tuberculosis, diphtheria, and other diseases. After the war, the employees of Bayer appeared in the IG Farben trial, one of the Nuremberg subsequent tribunals under U.S. jurisdiction. Among them was Fritz Termeer, a lot of these people. And actually, then Termeer was sentenced to 7 years, but released in 1950 for good behavior. And then, they went ahead and despite the fact that they had actually done all of these terrible things and been convicted of it, they actually rehired him, and this man was then elected to Bayer AG supervisory board in 1956, retaining the position for almost 10 years. It's quite terrifying, and I want to question the motives. Why would Bayer buy Monsanto? Why would Bayer, a company responsible for horrific crimes in the Holocaust, for human testing in Auschwitz, for a lot of the operations of the Holocaust, buy Monsanto? There was this mass lawsuit against Bayer over disastrous Monsanto acquisition that closed in 2018. He claims it inflicted billions of dollars in damages on the company, which it did, especially considering the ongoing lawsuits. The suit claims that Wenning's decision came after Bayer improperly obtained a copy of the then draft shareholder lawsuit through corporate espionage, actually. Now, people just can't touch this company. They've got too much money, too many resources, and they are continuously killing people throughout the world, like in India. Now, this is some deep knowledge, but they had, in 1995, introduced BT technology in India through a joint venture with Indian company Mako. And despite the fact that the Indian farmers and the government had continued to fight against it, and India has rules for regulating GMOs since 1989 under the Environmental Protection Act, it continued to push these things. Now, eventually, they couldn't start the commercial sales, but they continued to do testing, and then in 2002 they could really open up the testing. Now, the thing is, it didn't matter that the Supreme Court recommended a 10-year moratorium on field trials of GM food, termination of all ongoing trials of transgenic crops. Monsanto had already changed India's agriculture. Monsanto's seed monopolies, the destruction of alternatives, the collection of super profits from royalties on the farmers, and increasing vulnerability of monocultures has created a context for debt, suicides, and agrarian distress, which is driving the farmer suicide epidemic in India. The systemic control has been intensified with BT cotton. That is why most suicides are in the cotton belt, specifically where the BT cotton is so prevalent. The internal advisory by the Agricultural Ministry of India in January 2012 had this to say to the cotton growing states in India. Cotton farmers are in a deep crisis since shifting to BT cotton. The spate of farmer suicides in 2011 to 2012 has been particularly severe among these genetically modified BT cotton farmers. The highest acreage of BT cotton is in Maharashtra, and this is also where the highest farmer suicides are. Go figure. And Monsanto's royalty extraction and the high cost of seeds and chemicals have created a debt trap, according to Government of India data. Nearly 75% of rural debt is due to purchase inputs. As Monsanto's profits grow, farmers' debt grows. It is in the systemic sense that Monsanto's seeds are the seeds of suicide. Now, the ultimate seeds of suicide is Monsanto's patented technology to create sterile seeds called Terminator technology by the media. This sterile seed technology is a type of gene use restriction that produces a crop that will not produce viable offspring seeds or viable seeds at all with specific genes that are switched off. Now, the Convention on Biological Diversity has banned its use. Otherwise, Monsanto would be collecting even higher profits from seed, but they continue to use hybrid seeds and to inject this technology into agricultural economies worldwide. Here's another article here from The Guardian talking about the link between these deaths. More than 270,000 Indian cotton farmers who've killed themselves since 1995. It's pretty sick. It's really terrifying to think that these people are being manipulated in such a terrible way, that the land is being destroyed, and that these chemicals are in the cotton that are widely used for the clothes that we wear. Now, not only are they using glyphosate and Roundup on these GM seeds, but dicamba as well. Now, here is Genetic Literacy Project talking about the fact that Monsanto may have been a serious bad actor, actually. Now, an editor's note says on February 15th, Bayer and BASF were hit with a $265 million verdict for damages the jury concluded were based on the dicamba herbicide, as they are losing this lawsuit just like they're losing the one on Roundup. Now, Bayer and BASF actually were two companies that split off from IG Farben. Both were companies that were operating the Holocaust concentration camps during World War II. Both of these companies right here, the main agrochemical companies that are responsible for genetically modified seeds, dicamba, glyphosate compounds, Roundup, and this is sick. This is very, very sick stuff. The trial that is really hitting them began at the end of January back in 2015. It accused that releasing the cotton and soybeans resistant to the weed killer dicamba in 2015 and 2016 actually contributed to the destruction of these peach growers because the dicamba had drifted into nearby farms, causing massive damages. David, the Missouri peach grower of Bader Farms, which claims to have suffered $1.5 million in damages to their orchards in 2015 and an estimated permanent loss of 30,000 trees in 2016, is suing them. But this crisis traces back even more than a decade, with these seeds tolerant to the weed killer glyphosate came under fire because the farmers can spray their fields with Roundup, whose active ingredient is glyphosate, to kill weeds rather than having to resort to tilling, which releases carbon from the soil. Since 1990s, Monsanto engineered soybeans, corn, sugar beets, alfalfa, and cotton to tolerate glyphosate, which is sold in the patented forms by Monsanto as Roundup and in generic forms by many other companies. Now, this is the thing, is these chemicals, when sprayed on or even around other plants, will destroy the crops. But Monsanto continues to push and proliferate these and say that it's completely fine. Now, this is terrifying, and I want to tell you that this stuff will kill anything that's not genetically modified to withstand it. Now, these genetically modified foods are soaked in it. They're symbiotic with the chemical, but you are not. So this is killing us. It's killing me, killing you, poisoning our environment. It's killing the bees. It's poisoning the water, it's poisoning the air, it's poisoning the soil, and these companies are massive political donors, actually. Take a look at the statistics here on Open Secrets. Just take a look here, as they're already gearing up and getting ready even for the 2020 cycle. Bayer AG here actually ranks 883 out of 17,000 different political contributors, and in lobbying they actually rank 39 out of almost 6,000 lobbying firms. It's crazy to think that they had lobbied with almost $10 million in 2019 to continue to have political support. You can see here the people taking their money. You see all kinds of candidates here, a lot of notable ones, in fact. And you can see that they don't actually donate directly through their corporation, but from the PACs or individual members of the corporation. Most of the money is from PACs. A large portion, still 100,000, has already come from individuals. And this is terrifying, folks. You've really got to consider the fact that the Nazi war machine may still be going. Now, their affiliates, Bayer Healthcare, Bayer Crop Science, Monsanto Co., are all still operating, and these deadly companies are continuing to push their chemicals into our food supply and poison people passively through the food supply. You've got to consider the fact that the Nazi war machine is continuing its eugenics killing spree, actually. Now, GMO foods are everywhere, so you've got to speak out. Share this video, share the news, talk to people about it. And also, you've got to vote with your wallet, per se. You've got to look into what foods have this, but you also need to consider the fact that the current administration has the back of these awful multinational agrochemical companies. Now, with the nation distracted by public health and economic crises, Trump moves to allow GMO crops on wildlife refuges. Why would this happen? Only the Trump administration would aggressively promote the use of crops genetically engineered for pesticide tolerance on wildlife refuges. Why are they doing this? Why is this being pushed right now? Why is the administration's proposal happening this week, allowing the planting of genetically engineered seeds in 44,000 acres of farmland within the southeastern region of the National Wildlife Refuge System? It's a reversal of existing policy. You're injecting unnatural chemicals and genetically engineered things into nature in places where we're trying to preserve nature. This comes 2 years after President Donald Trump reversed the Obama administration's 2014 order to phase out the use of genetically engineered crops in wildlife preserves. If approved, the decision could result in the escalation of pesticide use in up to 131 refuges in 10 states. This is terribly, terribly concerning. Now, you've got to understand, these crops are genetically engineered to be symbiotic with the chemicals and to withstand them, but nothing else is. It's unnatural to be able to withstand it, and everything other than these genetically engineered plants will die, and the environment will die, the animals will die, and the people exposed to it may die as well. So people, wake up, spread the news, spread the information, speak out against this, and stay awake. Things are happening behind the scenes even while this whole COVID-19 outbreak continues. And I want to keep reporting and harping on this issue. I know this is a long video, but I hope that you will really watch it and spread this information. All you folks, please do like the video, put it on social media. I really do need the support, and I appreciate your love and support. I appreciate you subscribing. Shout out to you new folks subscribing to the channel. I really have a lot of love for everybody who's really hit the subscribe button. I'm excited to talk to you again in the next video. I'll be covering Hemp Inc., getting back into some stock news and analysis, covering the earnings that should be coming from Hemp Inc. soon. Now, until the next video, much love and peace out.